So a lot to discuss. We're joined by Peter Conradi, the foreign editor of the Sunday Times and author of the book Who Lost Russia? How the World Entered a New Cold War. Are we in a new Cold War here?
It's difficult. I mean, there are differences from the previous Cold War, but it's got a lot of similarities as well, which is the antagonism between two blocs, one of them essentially led by America and Western Europe, in fact the whole of Europe now, and the other really just with Russia in it.
And when we saw Boris Johnson there saying that Putin was directing the use of nerve agents in the UK, is that possible? Do you think he's correct in saying that?
I mean, everything is possible. I would be very intrigued to know how Boris Johnson knows precisely who is ordering this stuff. I mean, have we got a mole in the Kremlin? I suspect we haven't. Have we bugged the Kremlin? Even more unlikely. It goes a little bit back to the Litvinenko killing, where I think the verdict of the inquiry was that it was probably ordered by the Kremlin. I mean, it seems reasonable to assume that it has come from the Russian leadership. I mean, if it hadn't, then they will be reacting very differently, I think. But it's not. The kind of the whole situation around Putin is quite vague. To try to work out exactly who is doing what when. You know, is this something he's directly ordered? Is this something that someone in his entourage has done, thinking he wants it or it'll somehow help him? Or is it kind of rogue elements within the security services out for revenge? It's a very, as I say, very vague kind of command structure, which I think from the outside is very, very difficult to work out who is precisely giving the order to do what.
But does it go through, just going back to this command structure, I appreciate it's vague, but does he get the last call? Who is in charge of the Kremlin? Because there's lots of speculation that it might be different factions trying to vie for power. Of course, we've got the elections coming up at the weekend. Undoubtedly, Putin will win, but arguably the turnout is all key in that respect. But what is going on in the Kremlin?
Well, again, you know, it's very difficult to tell. I mean, what do we know? We know that Putin, after coming to power, cleared out all the previous people who'd been around Boris Yeltsin, but that was a long, long time ago. That was back in 2000. You know, in the meantime, he's surrounded himself with loyalists, people who are all there by virtue of having been appointed by him. It's a presidential system. They're all his people. You know, that being said, once people get together, you know, they can start to form factions among themselves. There's a sense in which also, you know, to what extent is he dependent on them, as almost in the same way that they are dependent on him.
Is there, if you hear some speculation that Putin is possibly a puppet in all of this, is there any reality in that?
I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration to call him a puppet, but I think he's not as all-powerful as he's often depicted. I mean, this is an argument that's often put forward by Mikhail Khodorkovsky, the oligarch who lives in exile in Britain, who's suggested that you know, he's not fully in control. I think one problem that Putin does face is he doesn't really have an exit strategy at some point in the future. But you know, he's just about to stand for election. He's hoping for another 6 years, so that's a long way down the line.
So is the timing of what's going on here, is that quite important, that he's trying to show himself as a pretty strong leader here? Well,
let's say it's quite convenient, as I think the Russians would put it. You know, it's not a coincidence that it's come out now. And he's certainly milking it for everything he can get.
Peter Conradi, author of Who Lost Russia, thank you very much for your expertise. Brilliant insight. Thank you.